All right, we're back on Morning Line on this Wednesday. Thanks for joining us. A great topic about what I think is a very, very important organization and addressing the issue of education and the services out there for sexual assault victims. The Safe Clinic we're talking about. You see the number on the screen there, 737-7587. If you choose to call in and ask a question or share a thought, Rachel Freeman's with us. She's the Safe Clinic president. We also have Pam Cruz with us, who is the lead sexual assault nurse examiner at Metro General, and you work together on this a lot. And we talked about how many cases you see. And when people do come to you, by the way, at the clinic, which is over at Metro Center, it's free as well, right? So a rape victim, they don't have to worry about how am I going to pay for this? Does insurance cover it? They come in, it's free. They present themselves to you as probably in many ways. They come in and they're very upset and they're saying, I've just been raped. It's a time-sensitive thing, too. I mean, typically, how often do you see them immediately after it occurs? Is it sometimes days later? How does it work?
I'll let Pam.
I mean, I know what's best, but I'm asking you first. Do sometimes people come in a week later?
They do. A week later, we would probably not collect a sexual assault case.
That's too late. That's why it's important. Now, I can understand for some women or men or whoever the victim is, it's just so difficult maybe to get themselves together to bring themselves in just hours after an attack. But if they can find a way to do it, that's best, isn't it?
It is.
Because the evidence you're collecting is time sensitive. Talk about a rape kit and what's done.
So what happens with a rape kit is a victim would come in, man or woman. They would get an interview by the nurse practitioner to figure out. We take a great interview as far as the physical and sexual assault, so we can figure out where it is that we need to collect swabs from.
Okay.
And then based on what the victim tells us, depends on where we would be collecting swabs. So, for instance, if a female had vaginal penetration, she would need to come in within 120 hours from the time of the assault, so we can collect DNA evidence, hopefully. Okay. If there's any type of rectal penetration, it's 72 hours. Oral penetration is 24 hours, and digital penetration with a finger in the vagina or rectum is 24 hours.
What type of, I understand if it's a male attacking a female and there's DNA left behind from, genital penetration, but what can you capture if the woman or man was penetrated with a finger?
So,
is there still DNA?
Yes. So the crime lab, and I'm kind of speaking out of line a little bit here. It's not my specialty.
Okay.
But the testing, the tools have gotten so fantastic that the epithelial cells, which are the top layer, skin cells, can be left behind, and hopefully that is the goal to collect.
Okay, and DNA is crucial. And so essentially the rape kit, then that swabbing, it would also collect if perhaps there was blood of some sort, maybe not the victim's blood, but maybe if the attacker bled somehow because there was a struggle. Right. You're looking for any hairs?
Hair. We're looking for hair. We also, a big thing that we're collecting now too is saliva. So if, say, an assailant licked a woman's breast or another man's breast, then we'll swab those areas, and sometimes we'll get saliva hits on those. Bite marks.
Again, very time sensitive, but bite marks as well. So yeah, if there's a bite mark on the victim, then you would take pictures of it, or
pictures. We have a 6-page form that we use that has a body diagram on it. So we document every injury, and then at the Safe Clinic we also have a camera that we take photographs with the victim's consent. Everything on a sexual assault exam is driven by the victim.
What they want to do,
what they don't want to do. Exactly.
But you tell them if you want to move forward with this is what we need. Right. Typically, how long would it take to do?
Depending on the type of penetration, I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into it. The minimum would be an hour. Okay. Usually, so it can be 3 hours. That's probably the average is 2 to 3 hours. But I will say, sometimes you might have a victim who has a lot of injuries. I'm talking about bruising, scratches, and those take a very long time to document and photograph. So I had a case not too long ago. It was 5 hours.
Oh, okay, so and that's true. Then we have to remember you're documenting everything. Now, the ones who are severely injured should go first to the hospital, of course. We've kind of said that, but you document literally everything, interview them, and so maybe minimum an hour, but then to do a thorough job. Does that mean always that these victims will choose to prosecute?
It doesn't, and you can always come get a rape exam at the Safe Clinic or the hospital and decide later.
So it doesn't mean once you're done with it, we got this, we're turning it over to the DA. That will be their call. You have the kit, it's here, and you tell them now, what do you want to do next? And she may or he may say, I don't know right now.
Correct.
I'm so shaken.
Yes.
And so if she goes to get family counseling, whatever happens, in the meantime, you hold that?
Correct.
And it's there.
It's held at the crime lab.
So what happens with it? So if you get a hold kit, so you can come into the hospital or the clinic and be an anonymous victim and get a hold kit, which means you're not interacting with law enforcement at that point. So we collect all the swabs, we assign you a specific number, and that's your hold kit. We do turn the kits over to the local law enforcement for whatever jurisdiction it happened in.
You will turn it over to them for holding, but if they choose to be anonymous, you're turning it over. This is number 1110.
Right.
Correct.
And so if you were the victim and you came today and you were, we assigned you 01056, then you would get that information. So if you choose to proceed forward, you would need to reach out to law enforcement, give them this kit number, and then you can work through that.
And they'll have that, and it can be their choice, which I think is great. You don't do any of that. It's not automatically referred to the DA's office at that point. And would you say most of the time it is, or is it rare when someone goes through this whole process? Because I would think if you're going to go through all that process, you're thinking, I might want to prosecute. So otherwise, why bother?
The majority of cases that we see law enforcement is involved.
They decide, yes, we want to pursue this, I suppose.
And the reason for the hold kits, and this has been a recent change within our community, only a few years ago actually, is because when someone experiences a sexual assault or rape, they've been traumatized, and to collect the evidence, it's so time sensitive. Like Pam said, the most time you can wait is 120 hours. That's 5 days. And to make that type of decision when what we know is that most rapes and sexual assaults happen by somebody known to the victim, that's a big decision to have to make in a short amount of time. That you want to prosecute, that there's so much we know about the brain and trauma in the brain, and having to make that type of decision in that amount of time can be very challenging. So what we do at the Sexual Assault Center is make sure that everybody has an advocate available to them, whether they're getting the rape kit done at a hospital or at the safe clinic. So that advocate is going to stick with you through the whole process and inform you of all of your rights, inform you of how the process can play out, help you along this journey, and answer any questions that you might have.
And by the way, the idea of having an anonymous kit that's held while they decide what they want to do, that would happen if they went to a hospital as well. It's never automatically referred to the DA if the victim is not given approval of that. So I just want to be clear on that. You guys do that, hospitals would do that as well, correct?
Right. And that is state law now. There is a state law regarding hold kits.
Meaning it was state law referencing what? That
victims can be anonymous and have a kit collected and it be held. I believe the state law says that law enforcement has to hold it for 3 years.
Okay. Yeah.
But that is the victim's right. I am like Rachel. I would love for every victim to report to law enforcement, but certainly want to be respectful of anybody's right to do so, because you don't know what the trauma the patient's experiencing. But also when you involve law enforcement, this is what I tell patients a lot of times. On the front end, it's better to get law enforcement involved. You can make a report, and then you can say, I don't want to do anything else right now. I need some time to think about this. Because the victim is driving the train the whole way. That's what I always tell them. They're the conductor. The rest of us are just riding the train with them. They make all the decisions. And it's, for advocacy, for exam, for law enforcement, for prosecution. They can stop the process anywhere in the system they want to.
Right.
Or they can put it on hold, if you will. So.
Well, I would also think there are victims that come to you that right off the bat, they're like, can you get the cops here now?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so that happens as well. And I was also going to wonder, too, when they come to the safe clinic, I know a busy hospital is one thing, but the safe clinic over there in Metro Center, is it kind of secure? Because you also wonder in those instances where the suspect in this case is still out there, maybe looking for the victim again. So are you ready for that in case someone tries to get into the clinic and stop her?
We are. We took all of that into consideration when we built the safe clinic.
Okay.
And many people do come in with the police.
Okay, I was going to say.
A lot of times you can call 911 right after it happens and then come in with the police. So that there are all different ways that this can happen, and we do hope that law enforcement is involved, because we want to see the victim get justice, but we want them to do it when they're ready and on their own time.
And get the
we also know that most perpetrators abuse more than once.
Right.
So
there could be other victims, if not just this one. You want to bring us. I think a lot of these victims realize, not just for me, but I don't want this to happen to anyone else.
But
And
regarding
that's hard to do, but yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to go back about the safety at the Safe Clinic. We built a gate around the entrance to the Safe Clinic and around the whole parking lot. So you can only get into the clinic if you're granted access.
Great.
So
Cameras?
Cameras. So you have to drive in, push a button. We can see who's coming in. We allow you in, and then once you get into the parking lot, there's another code at the keypad, secure entrance at the door. So we have to allow you access into the door. And there's a separate entrance, separate parking lot for the Safe Clinic than there is for the full sexual assault center, where you would come in to get advocacy or trainings or things like that, counseling.
But the victims, they have a special way that they can come in.
Right.
That's awesome. Let's take a quick phone call from Ann. Ann, good morning. Hi, Ann.
Good morning. My daughter was barely 17 when she was sexually assaulted by several of her classmates. And she chose to deal with it in her own way, and that was leaving the state to go away to college. And she's now 30, and she is still dealing with it in recovery in her own way. And the most cathartic thing she did was spend a year walking across the country by herself, and has done a great deal of healing in that year. Recovery is traumatic, and it is years. I've watched Nashville in the last 25 years because of her assault, and the Vanderbilt case brought it to the forefront. How do you think that affected the laws that have changed and the success in getting the Safe Clinic started? And what are you doing for recovery for victims? Because as a parent, I watched my child go through hell, and I watched Nashville do absolutely nothing for victims for years, and it wasn't until the rape case at Vanderbilt that changes really became apparent here in our city. So I'd really like your input on how that case affected what our city is doing for our victims now.
All right. Thank you so much, Ann.
Those are great questions, Anne. First of all, nobody deserves to be raped or sexually assaulted, and it's devastating, especially when it's your child. This is not something that deserves to happen to anybody, and it's never the fault of the victim. And it's so sad and unfortunate when it happens, and especially when it happens and you don't feel that you have the support you need to recover. Anne's story is not in isolation. Anne's story and her daughter's story is sadly a very common story. And Anne is exactly right. The Vanderbilt rape case and the Me Too movement have changed the conversation about sexual assault in our community and across our nation. The Sexual Assault Center has been open for 41 years. We started as a crisis line, and we've been providing counseling and advocacy ever since. But unless you need us, you don't know about us. The Safe Clinic has changed that a little bit, because we're now responding to immediate, acute cases of sexual assault instead of just years later. But we work with about 1,250 people in Middle Tennessee a year through our counseling and advocacy programs, and the vast majority of people who are coming to us are adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse, meaning that they're coming to us years after the abuse happened.
But it's still affecting their lives.
It's still affecting their lives. And like Anne said, it often takes years to recover, which is one of the reasons why we want to have this conversation, and we want to talk about it more. We want to engage the community more. We want to decrease the shame and the stigma around experiencing sexual assault, because if people feel less shame reporting, if people feel less shame coming forward, then the recovery process will be lessened. And we will be better able as a community to hold offenders accountable and to develop more conversations and healthy response education around consent, around healthy relationships, around respect, around all of the elements of preventing sexual violence. And we have to be brave enough as a community to have those very difficult conversations to prevent these incidents like that happened to Ann's daughter.
Yeah, and I hope Ann's right that at least with time and some of these unfortunate high-profile cases and then efforts from you two and others coming on shows like this, maybe it's getting better where people realize there's more help out there. And we educate people to report these things as well. Look, we'll take a break. When we come back, more calls. Krista and Paul and others. If you have questions or comments, stay there. We'll get to you right after this. Stay with us.